Bruh. Hello, everyone. Oh, yeah. Light is a little bit better. Me. Ooh, music too loud. For me, at the very least. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I haven't been streaming in a while. Sorry about that. Yeah, people have started to ask me, "Are you gonna stream now?" And yeah, I'm actually about to stream. I'm streaming right now. Oh, let me switch my desktop here. Hello, everyone. Oh man, yeah, it's been a while. Sorry about that. I'm still playing a little bit of nurse at home because my partner is still in recovery from their surgery. So I am basically, they cannot lift stuff and um, they don't have full access to their movement. So I have to help them out, which means I have to sometimes be interrupted while I'm doing things, and that is not entirely conducive of doing a stream for like 3 hours. Um, but yeah, it's getting better. So um, things are settling down, um, and I'll try to go back to stream at the very least once a week. Um, so hopefully we are back. The other thing is that I have been more involved with the end of the GNOME release cycle. So there have been a bunch of like late issues and release days and a bunch of other things that are not really interesting enough for me to stream. They are very mechanical stuff. So the end result is that I've been busy with that. And the other thing is that I've also been um, doing some like job hunting, and I'm waiting for a couple of things to happen. But the end result is that yeah, I didn't have a lot of time to work on GNOME like on stream for random stuff. 21st release date. Oh, let me double check. So, uh, the release date, in theory, is the 21st, but it depends entirely on whether or not the release is gonna have any problems or not. So let me double check. The tarbles are due on this Saturday in 3 days, and the release in theory is going to be out on Wednesday, the 21st. Yes. So yeah, we're close now to GNOME 43, and it's going to be a thing. Um, Transplanting GNOME food and his interaction. Yeah, no, it wasn't a huge surgery. It's still some stuff that is rolling over from when they had cancer, like what was that, 3-4 years ago now. Yeah, 4 years ago. So stuff is still rolling over, but they're fine. So it's absolutely fine. There is nothing to worry about. uh, so it's just stuff that it's been it's been rolling over for a while, and then COVID happened and had to be delayed, and then stuff happened all at the same time because that's usually what happens when it's medical related. So the end result is that, yeah, we were waiting for this to happen anyway. Some of we had to delay a bunch of stuff this year because we knew that something was going to happen before the end of the year, and then was supposed to happen in what, June? No, sorry, was supposed to happen in May, then was supposed to happen in June, July, and then it happened in August. Basically, they called us and they say, yeah, now. Okay. So that was the result. Um, so we were expecting it. So nothing no emergency and nothing major. So no worries. Um, but yeah, hi Carlo, I Scaro, I Iconium, I Kaliha, I Pervoy, and yeah, welcome. uh, Lots of first time chat notifications. So great. Uh, yeah. Didn't make myself some tea. Well, anyway, I'm already caffeinated enough. I think I'm. I had to go out around lunchtime um, to pick up stuff, and I went. I didn't have my coffee this morning, so I went to get caffeinated, and I think I overdid it a little bit. I got my usual 4-shot latte, um, and I started like vibrating a little bit. Uh, that usually happens when I drink like I it's perfectly fine if I drink it in the morning, like 8, 9. If I drink a 4-shot latte after like 12, I start vibrating until I basically move faster than the eye can register. So no tea. I already had a mug of tea, and I'll skip it. I'm also surrounded by cats today. You cannot see them because they're like lying at my feet. But yeah, I and one is on um my other chair. But I'm surrounded by cats, so I might have to get up and open the door at some point. So hopefully they will make themselves heard, at the very least for me, if not for everyone in the chat. Right. So what I wanted to do today. Today was a little bit of Python for a change. I'm surprised that I didn't drink a latte. So I usually make my own espresso in the morning. So it's yeah, that's usually it. But I'm I also enjoy drinking latte. I enjoy drinking longer like long coffee. I have my tricks to reduce the amount of milk, or like switch milk to oat milk because like cow milk gives me a little bit of rumbly tummy. Um, but the yeah, I also enjoy latte and like flat white and all the non-original coffees, non-espresso coffees. Of course, yeah, 4 shots are the minimum required quantity of caffeine to get me going. Yeah. So, Python. Well, to be fair, um, if you've seen previous like streams about like developing GNOME applications in Python, Rust, and everything else, I've done a couple of streams releasing Amberol and things like that. Um, you will realize that I hate the AppStream metadata, and I hate it so much that I decided to write an application that lets me write it. Because otherwise I'm going to just start like foaming at the mouth. because I really don't like writing it by hand. A few questions from NoobMe. How do you learn every API? The example, developing text viewer, you can someone know what is needed for such project. How do I learn a new API? Well, for my particular case, it took me 20 years. I assume not everyone will try to follow my example. Learning the API is not a huge deal in GNOME. Learning API, the APIs tend to be pretty much stock everywhere. So everyone follows the same patterns, especially because we have a bunch of they have to be machine readable and machine parsable in order to generate the introspection data, so you can use the API using different languages. The end result is that we follow pretty strict conventions when it comes to C APIs in like GNOME land. For the rest is mostly I generally tend to stay up to date with what the GNOME SDK provides out of the box. And mostly because I'm in the release team, so I know kind of what happens there. The other thing is that the developer documentation website has a list of all the well-known components inside the GNOME SDK. It needs to be fixed, it needs to be reorganized, and needs to be possibly updated so that it will be a little bit more easy to look into. But in general, there's a rough guide of every single component that is useful for application development in GNOME. And the other thing is I generally just read a ton of code. That's all I do, both in professional sense and in volunteer sense. Yeah, one of the cats is aching to go out. Just 1 second. Yes, I understand. Go. No? Oh, Jesus. Sorry about that. One of the cats wanted to go out. I close the door because otherwise I will make everyone mad inside the house. What was I saying? Oh yeah, no, I read code. I read a ton of code. I look at applications, I look at new applications, look at existing applications to understand how they work and how they're put together. Oh, of course, I let one cat out. I need to let the other one out as well. Yes. Cats. Of course, they will not do what they will not do what you want. They will do what they want. Right. So, I was saying, AppStream metadata, and the metadata, the AppStream info file that applications have to provide, because we use it everywhere. We use it in Flatpak, we use it in distributions, we use it inside software stores and everywhere else, basically. So the end result is that most people have to write it by hand because it's an XML file. And people have to read the specification, which is actually pretty terrible. Because it doesn't tell you exactly what are the requirements for each key and things like that. Worst of all, there are a couple of tools that do that, that do validation of the XML, and they will not tell you what are the rules that you have to follow, because why would they? They're just doing validation, right? Well, yeah, I'm not gonna go into that because otherwise this stream is gonna be a rant stream, and nobody will learn anything except that when I hate something, my hate is total and all encompassing, and my edit burns with the brightness of 1,000 suns. So, which it's like 5 seconds. It's a 5 seconds takeaway on whenever I hate something. But it's not useful. It might be funny, but it's not useful for anybody. So instead, let's put hate to a productive use, and let's write some code at this point. So I started off with a very simple Python template, which is kind of the same template I used for the text viewer. It's the same template that GNOME Builder provides, except I add my own stuff because I enjoy well, I enjoy pain and misery, but also I enjoy making my code adhere to a couple of standards, like the reuse specification, so that every file is appropriately licensed and it has the appropriate ownership information, copyright information, so that automated tools can go through it and deal with it. Is the format strictly specified somewhere? Which format? The Apple, the AppStream, like the AppStream format. There is a specification, yeah. There is a specification, and I can show it to you. It's this one. So this is the AppStream spec here. So the main problem with the AppStream spec is that the AppStream website, the specification thing, is both a specification and a website that is trying to sell you about how AppStream works. And this is the specification for the metadata that you're supposed to put inside your application. And yeah, it's not great. I mean, there is a description of every tag, but also there is no description of what is mandatory and what is not mandatory. Stuff that is mandatory will be validated by secondary tools, but those secondary tools will not tell you essentially why the rules are that way. The specification will not tell you why the rules are that way. Some of the stuff is perfectly valid, but also it will not pass any validation tool. Some of the stuff is a mix and match of random things, and you don't know if it's actually valid or not. Yeah, not great. This is definitely not how I would structure a specification whatsoever. It's the main problem is that it's not a real specification. A specification will not be structured this way. This is kind of a tutorial and also kind of like a description of the spec, but it's not really a spec because it's missing a bunch of stuff there. Also, it predates some other specification like the SpeedX licensing like schema, so it had to be bolted on top. In some cases, some decisions that were made like 10 years ago that made kind of sense at the time don't make sense anymore. Like for instance, the release block. Where are you? Where are you? Yeah, the release block has like a timestamp attribute, and the timestamp attribute should really not exist at all because it's using a Unix epoch, and a Unix epoch is the stupidest date format ever invented by man. It definitely should not ever go into a serialization format that is supposed to exist and be written by human beings. It's the stupidest thing ever made, and it should have been a date. It should have been date tag. So technically, timestamp is deprecated, but it's not really deprecated because it doesn't tell you anything. The another thing that interacts here is how are all these bits and pieces meant to interact with it with itself. If I make a development like release, what happens if I have a urgency tag? What happens if I have both the timestamp and the date? Yeah, it doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you. Oh, it's another thing, yeah. What is the difference between meta-info and AppData? There is no difference. AppData is the old version, old file name, and meta-info is the new name. That's it. All the implementations, in order to be conformant, should also look into the AppData directory for an AppData XML file. But the actual name should be meta-info, and meta-info, the directory should be user share meta-info, and the file should be .metainfo.xml. Another thing that's missing, which is hilarious, there is no MIME type for the appdata / metainfo file. So I guess if you want to open it with a specific editor, or if you want to open it with a specific tool, well, fuck you, I guess. So it's the usual case of somebody, well, of some stuff that was like specced out in order to cover some like use case. It got about 80% of the job done, and then the remaining 80% was completely uninteresting, so nobody ever did work. It's also the case of like a lot of this volunteer driven stuff. It's just missing some quality of life improvement. So yeah, that's incredibly annoying. Is maintained by some FreeSOAP committee? There is no committee. Technically speaking, it's maintained by a single person, but like any other free desktop specification, it's maintained by like one person or two people. Otherwise, they are not maintained at all because they were in like 15 years ago and they are done. There's nothing there. There's nothing else there. So, do you follow Solid and Uncle Bob guidelines? I have no idea what Uncle Bob guidelines are. Is applicable to C? Would it be sustainable, maintainable? Applicable to C what? The reuse specification? The reuse specification is applicable to anything that is programming language, like anything that is application or like free software or any project, basically. So yeah, I didn't understand the question. The reuse specification is it's this one. It's just a way to specify this file uses this licenses. This file has this copyright information, and that's it. So that people can, not people, but tools can like parse the entire thing and say, okay, this project, the aggregate work of this project, it falls under this license or these licenses, and that's it basically, and do like license conformance work there. It's used by a bunch of tooling, mostly because it's useful for creating a software bill of materials, an SBOM. It's very useful for that. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do right now is write a small application using like GTK and libadwaita for GNOME that lets you open up an AppStream slash metainfo XML file that you have to ship with your application and lets you edit the fields there, and possibly does some of the validation for you so you don't have to deal with fixing the XML exposed. Of course, you should have the XML validation inside your test suite, and that has to be exercised by the CI pipeline. But since this is a human writable file, it's supposed to be human writable. It's supposed to be edited by a human being every time you create like a new release. I know that people have some random scripts that take a news file and then they take the news file and then generate the release data from the news file. More often than not is the other way around. They take the app data, the meta info XML, and then generate the news file from that because, surprise, parsing freeform text is harder than parsing XML. So that's one thing. But generally speaking, yeah, you're supposed to take the XML file, edit it, and add the fields there and change a bunch of stuff there. And then that XML file will be used to generate a bunch of other things. It used to be generate the release information on FlatHub, the release information inside like GNOME software or KDE Discover, like app stores and stuff like that. And if it's meant to be used, if it's meant to be written by a human being, then it has to be actually readable by a human being. Otherwise, yeah. And I know that writing XML is not bad. I mean, people write HTML for a living, right? But if you have a bunch of validation rules inside a spec that nobody reads, and those validation rules are undocumented and they depend on the tooling, then you probably want to have some tool that helps you out with that. So I wrote a bunch of Python that does precisely that and slaps a UI on top of that so that people can actually, if not enjoy, at the very least deal with it. So this is a very simple example. This is a copy of the Amberol app data file. And yeah, doesn't, I mean, it's not super, super complicated. Here are a bunch of licensing terms here for the project, for the metadata. These are the author details, things like that. This is a subset of the entire thing. So it's not complete, but this is like a couple of days of work. GTK Builder XML. Well, GTK Builder XML is not that bad. I mean, it's a lot more, for starter, is a lot simpler than the AppStream XML format. You only have like 4 tags. You have 4 elements, and that's it. They're not 4, like they are probably around 10-ish. But the structure is like very simple. It's more similar to like HTML than it's similar to this. This one is not simple at all. I mean, this is really terrible, actually. I mean, as I said, this is a lot. These are all the possible like elements, and all the elements have possible like attributes and bunch of stuff like that. And yeah, So hi, Letiera. View count is popping off. I don't know. Maybe it's the absence that makes the art grow fonder. I've been streamed in a couple of weeks, so the end result probably more. So people are joining in to see me ramble. Hi, Momo Ninja. Do you use Cambalachi instead of Glade to work on widgets? I don't use Cambalachi. I don't use Glade. I think I last used Glade in 2011, maybe. Yeah, I don't use Glade. I still remember Glade generated like C code instead of generating XML. Um, I don't use Gambalachi because I find that I'm much more adept at writing XML by hand, especially like UI XML. Um, Iconium, what do you think about Blueprint? I think it's an interesting experiment. It's a very interesting experiment. I'm keeping an eye on it. Also because maybe we really want to reintegrate it in GTK for GTK 5. There are a couple of issues there. The format is not complete. It's being able to extend it with custom like elements and custom grammar for custom widgets is kind of an important detail, or maybe not. I mean, we allow to do that in GTK because you can implement the buildable interface yourself and add your own elements and stuff like that. Maybe that is not important. Maybe in the future, it's not going to be a thing anymore. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting. Um, it is an interesting experiment that I am very much in favor of. Like a few years ago, people were like before GTK 4 was released, people were thinking, okay, how do we move on from GTK Builder XML? And there was a discussion about that. There was a discussion of how to make it more extensible or how to allow like right hand side and left hand side evaluation or property bindings and things like that. And my contribution to that discussion was mostly, well, apart from the historical perspective, since I've been subjected to essentially all the serialization deserialization formats in GTK since like early 2000s. Apart from that historical perspective was telling people to like experiment with new formats, and you can take any format and then like generate XML out of it. And if you do that, then you can understand what are the limits of any grammar that you propose. So I'm actually very happy that somebody took that took that suggestion and run with it. So I'm hopeful that we'll learn something new, and we'll learn how to make new ways to describe UIs that are not like in code. For my current like for my current needs, XML is perfectly fine, but I understand that not everyone is happy about it. So I'm perfectly happy if people are experimenting with Blueprint and they're moving their code there. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, so this is my first real Python application using GTK4 and libadwaita in a ever. Apart from the fake text viewer application that I wrote for the getting started tutorial for the GNOME developer documentation, I haven't written Python, like a GUI Python app in like forever. I think my last GUI Python app was for GNOME 2. And I'm talking about early GNOME 2, talking about 2003, 2004. So it's been a while. But yeah, while I'm into it, while I'm like writing this stuff, I also discovered a few things about like Python and GTK4. So um, I think this is a good thing because of course it will tell me how to document this stuff in the future. Personally favor solution like Rust and RAM4, Haskell, GI declarative, the describing UI declaratively in the host language and enjoy compilers help. Yeah, that's another solution. That's entirely another solution, and it's perfectly fine. One of the things that we were discussing about in for GTK5 was to have GTK Builder, like the next iteration of GTK Builder, um, to be able to do code generation instead of doing XML parsing at runtime. So basically kind of go back to how Glade used to work in early 2000s. So you have the description of your UI, and then it generates a bunch of code for you at build time that you can keep around. Well, you don't have to keep around. And then you can reference it from your own code base. And then you can decide to generate like C or Python or Rust or whatever. So that is an interesting venue of like exploration. Like code generation is a thing, especially because then you have the compiler help you if you forgot like to if you named like a template child. If you named it wrong, then you get a compiler error instead of having a runtime error, for instance. But yeah, there are like ideas floating around. We are still debating things. So maybe we'll have something like that. Maybe we'll have something more complex. Maybe we'll have something more simple. Who knows? Right now we're still very much inside the GTK4 space, so that means XML. Okay, so right. Yeah, let's go over a little bit of the structure of this application so that it's understandable as soon as I start like hacking on it. Right. So this stuff is basically the template from GNOME Builder, so I'm not going to go over it. It's exactly the same as the text viewer example in the getting started documentation. It does exactly what it says on the tin, so it's not complicated at all. But yeah, so the main structure here is inside the window UI file and the window class. So let me go back to that here. So here we have the main window, header bar, and then we have the main view here. So one of the things that I didn't want to do was, well, the first iteration was essentially, have a list box and then add a bunch of libadwaita rows here, and then we go through each one of them, fill out the details and stuff like that. Basically, just how to write XML without having to write XML. The main problem is that it gets overwhelming pretty fast because, as I said, the XML spec for the AppStream data is massive. There is a lot of stuff there, and some things have like nested information. Like each release has a release description, then it can have release artifacts attached to it, have information on when the release was done and things like that. And having that inside the main view would be kind of problematic. So I left the application details here and the licensing here. The licensing will probably move somewhere else. We'll move it inside a thing that is similar to the author details here. The way it's done is, again, very simple. I have a scroll window here with a clamp so that the window contents get aligned at the center, but also they have a minimum size and they can stretch a little bit further when I resize the window. Right now I'm clamping between 500 pixels and 650 pixels. I can probably tweak it a little bit, so I can tweak it like 400 pixels instead. Especially if I move this somewhere else. But yeah, you can see like I can squeeze it a little bit and then it grows until it stops and then I resize and this is centered. This is stuff that is very similar to how the system settings works in GNOME. So it's pretty much the same kind of layout. And then for each like blob, I have a specific box here. Like the info details box is this one, and the licensing box is this one. And these are separate template children. We can go here. For instance, the details UI is a simple GTK box with a label and a list box with a bunch of entry rows, and then like a bunch of rows here, like an entry row here or a list box row containing this one that is handwritten. It's the description box is basically just a box with a label here that says this is the description, and then an image here for the icon, and then a scroll window with a text view. The Adwaita doesn't have a Adwaita text box like row or text view row, but we can simulate one pretty much manually like this. So you get like you start with a list box row here, so you can add it to the list box here, and then you add a box to contain the description label and the scroll window here, and then we add another box here to contain the description and the icon here, and that's it. It's pretty simple. The styling classes allows you to get a very simple like alignment here of all the fields. Yeah, the text view title doesn't. Yeah, it's true, but it is like that because like if I do something like this, now it fits because it's empty. But yeah, in theory I could style it differently. So if this is empty, then the description is full here. If I start typing into it, the description goes up as well. It's, yeah. I'll leave the styling to like designers. I'll leave the styling to designers. I know they will have feedback on this stuff. Like for instance, the description box here is now complete anyway. I don't want to have XML tags here. I want to take the content here and basically parse it as kind of markdown, as a subset of markdown, so that like paragraphs will be turned into like P paragraphs, and simple simple lists will be turned into unordered lists. The subset of elements that are usable inside the description tag is very limited, so it's easy to turn like a subset of markdown into this before web view gets embedded and render markdown. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna render anything. I'm just gonna like take the text here and then parse it, and then turn it into like the subset of XML that can be used inside the description. Right now, I'm doing something incredibly evil. So I'm basically taking the XML here. Whenever you write it down, we take the XML here, and then we take it as is. We wrap it around description tags, and then we take that and we basically just parse it again as XML and attach it to the rest of the XML that we're generating. And the other way around, when we parse the XML, here we take that block and we turn it into a string with all the tags there, and then we put it inside the text view. It is so evil. I'm not gonna even pretend it's a good idea, but it lets me load the XML description as it is, so I don't have to deal with additional crap. Yeah, so yeah, I'm probably going to leave the application details here, and then I'm going to move the licensing bit into a separate kind of thing. Yeah, this is what's going to happen. So the author details here, this is an action row inside the XML file. So whenever you activate an action row, here, let me find it. Yeah, we emit an action here. In this case, it's called meta-info subpage with a parameter here called author details. The parameter is a string like value. So whenever we activate this, we emit an action. We activate an action that is called. It's going to be meta-info subpage with a single parameter author details. So we click this, and what happens here is that the window as an action called meta-info subpage that takes a string as a parameter, and then we take that parameter and we first set the visible child inside a stack, and then we tell the surrounding leaflet, hey, you have to switch page there. So it's going to be, it's basically trying to separate UI description from UI logic. We emit an action and that action gets handled somewhere else. The same thing happens with the back. This button here emits an action which is meta-info back, and whenever we activate the button, the action gets activated and it tells the leaflet, the surrounding leaflet, to basically navigate back to the primary child. The primary child is being this instead of this, which is the secondary child. And the secondary child is a stack, and each stack has a page, and each page contains its own set of widgets there. Do you also plan on some formatting settings like indentation and line width? Not really. So the only reason why the indentation and line, the indentation is there. I already generate everything indented, like as it should be. The line width is there mostly because of human constraints. So if you want a human to open up the XML, like let me check. Yeah, here. So let me open the file that I opened here. So the XML is that I'm loading is this one. And it's already indented. This one, I didn't write this manually. I wrote it inside the XML, the application here. The XML is already indented, and you can see that the description stuff gets dumped as is, even though it's validated as actual XML. The end result is that I load this, and if I save it, it will save it with the like indentation. It will pretty print it. It will pretty print it for you. I'm not entirely sure this is a good idea, but for debugging purposes at the moment, this is what we get. But theoretically speaking, there is nothing that says that this should not work like this. So the text inside a paragraph should not like go to a new line. There is nothing that says that this is necessary. Like if I could do this. And it will work. Let me close this. Discard. So if I go and do this and I save it, I replace it. Okay. And I reopen this. And now you can see. So there is nothing there done for indentation or anything. But theoretically speaking, if I wanted to, like if right now I'm writing XML as is. If I wanted to in the future, well, if I wanted to, the way I wanted that to happen here is that I will write the text as it is and then go to a new line and then add a new line again to have a separate paragraph. And then I will take that paragraph and like constrain it between two P elements. And for a simple unordered list here, would be exactly the same. So the end result is that I'm probably gonna drop the line length limits. I'm going to keep the indentation, the pretty printing here, because it's a lot easier to deal with in terms of like diffing and visual noise. But there is nothing that says that the XML has to be pretty printed in any way. The only reason why it happens today is because the people edit the XML by hand. That's it. That's the only reason why. Another thing that happens here is that the application ID here is a template because the app data file gets used as a template and modified by the build system. So you take the template and then you add the application ID, and also has to be translated and things like that. So the end result is that I'll probably add some tweak in the UI that says, okay, the application ID is going to be a template, so call it application ID instead of and validate it. So don't validate it actually, because right now if I do something like this, I cannot leave the application ID empty, for instance. But I also don't. But at the moment I don't do validation like IO blah blah. This one is not a valid application ID because the dash is not a valid like separator, or I don't do something like this. This is not a valid ID because it's not a reverse DNS. But at the moment I cannot do this kind of validation because, of course, otherwise this bit here would not be valid. would not be a valid application ID. But in this case, this is a template, so technically speaking, this one would be a valid value for a template. So basically, I'll have some sort of control that says I'm not writing a manifest as it like an AppStream XML as it is. I'm writing a template for the build system to deal with. So please don't do validation on the application ID, for instance. Like, don't do an additional validation. In theory, I could like tell the I could have this application do an additional validation pass on the application ID saying, okay, you entered an invalid application ID. Are you sure you want to use this? And if you try to do that, the application will not save it for you. But again, yeah, if I wanted to write a template, then this one would be a perfectly valid thing. So let's make something happen here, and let's add some actual example code here. Yeah, I want to move the licensing to a subpage. I don't want to have it here. It's kind of pointless to have it like smack back in front of you. The default licensing should be like Creative Commons anyway, so it's perfectly fine if you forget to set the licensing terms there. So let's close this. Warning from GTK. Great, that's fine. It's perfectly fine. So we go inside the window UI and we have the licensing box, which is already its own widget. So we have to turn this into this. So for the time being, we are going to take this here and actually copy it here. We're going to remove this. And we are going to call it licensing group, license row, licensing, and we are going to call it license details. We keep the action name exactly as it is, but the target changes. The target is the parameter for the action that you're sending. The idea is that you call the exact same action, but the parameter will be used later on for switching to a different page. And the different page is here. Typo here. So we're going to add a new page, licensing details subpage, inside the stack. So we have to basically do the exact same thing we've done here. Okay, so we're going to copy it, actually, copy and paste it. There we go. And we call it license details. Yep, license details. So the stack page name is the same argument as the action that we are triggering when we're activating when we click that button. Okay, we'll call it licensing. So the stack page contains not just the content of the window, but also the header bar, because the header bar has to have a back button here. So we can go back to the main view of the application. And instead of having the author box here, we are going to have the license box, which is the widget that we are creating here, the licensing box, sorry. And we call it license. And here we go. So the author UI contains a bin with the clamp here. So we're going to have to basically replicate this inside the licensing UI. The licensing UI currently is a subclass of GTK box with all the data inside it. We want to turn that into what we do inside the author here. So we are going to change the details here, and instead of subclassing GTK box, we're going to subclass bin and have a single child there. We do that because we only have a single thing. Of course, we cannot just add a GTK list box. Otherwise the thing will be kind of weird. The output will be stretched all over the place. Okay, so we're gonna add a clamp there. And we're gonna pack the list box inside the clamp. And we're gonna keep the children exactly as they are because we don't have anything else there. Object and property. And we are gonna change this to 400. We are also gonna change here to 400. We have to replicate the clamp here, the thresholds and maximum size to fit inside the same thing that we use here inside the main window, so that the size doesn't like wobble between pages. It's not strictly necessary. Each page can have its own rules on how big things should be or should not be, but you tend to like fit within the same kind of spacing information. Okay, so license details. Okay, so we have to go back into the window here because we have the licensing here, which is a template child. Yeah, that's fine. So we don't have to change anything here because the subpage action, as I said, is parameterized. So we take the parameter and we pass it. We take the parameter, we unpack it, and we pass it as the visible child of the stack. And then we tell the leaflet, navigate to your secondary child here, so the stack will become visible. And then we press back. We tell the leaflet, please go back to the previous view. Everything is model view controllers all the way down. So the way it works, well, first let's try it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, of course. I have to go here. I'm an idiot. I forget things. Libadwaita bin here. And then, yeah. Of course. And there you go. So licensing goes into this, and then you get, yeah. typical mistake. You fix something in the XML, you have to also fix the if you have a template, the template has to match the class representation because the two are the same thing. It's just telling GTK, hey, I have this class here, all the properties and children and stuff like that are defined inside the XML. Please load the XML whenever you instantiate a class. And the two have to match. Otherwise, GTK doesn't know what to do. Yeah. One of the things that could be useful to do here would be to take the license, the project license, and the metadata license and show them inside the row here using the suffix widget. So whenever you change it, the row changes with it. So you basically have a shortcut to see what you set. And same for the author details, like adding the developer name and the at the very least the developer name. The project group and the update contact may not be as interesting. But yeah, if I open the file here, I go licensing, yep, they're already set, just like the author details there. Yeah, essentially this is how I envision this working. Like the important stuff gets the front page, the less important bits, they get moved to subpages. Like there will be a releases like section here that's gonna go to a separate page because releases can be multiple like rows, so the application could grow in a very completely unbounded, which would not be great if you have to scroll down the entirety of the UI. But other stuff could go here in the main thing, in the main UI. Other things that should go into subpages is stuff that doesn't change as often. Like the description, I assume can change because you add new features, you want to change the description, you like tweak stuff. The name and the application ID are kind of important, so they should be front and center, even though they don't change. But yeah, the summary and the description should stay there. But the licensing terms do not change that often. Ideally, they don't change at all. And so do the author details. They are not as important. So the way this entire thing works is by mapping the metadata here like as an object to widgets and vice versa. And the way it works is, generally speaking, the way every data-oriented GTK application works. So model view controllers all the way down. You have the model object, which is the meta info object here. It has a bunch of properties for every single like field that it has to deal with. Right now, it's incomplete because it doesn't parse the entire spec. But for the stuff that is represented by a widget, we have properties there. They will have other properties that will exist in the future. And then we have a parser, very simple, like elementary parser, because the XML, yeah, it's written by hand, but it's not a generic XML format. It has validation tools. Cough, cough. So yeah, there is a bunch of stuff, the usual API to dump and parse the XML. I went and tried to be as Pythonic as possible and added the various subclasses for like separate blocks of data inside the XML. This is very like baby's first Python application. I'm not a Pythonista. I usually use Python for simple projects or projects that have to deal with parsing XML for some reason. It's Perl used to be my go-to language for that. I don't do Perl anymore, sadly. But yeah, if I have to parse a bunch of XML, I usually end up with Python. But I'm not a Python developer at all, so don't mistake me for one. So we have the model object here, and then we have a bunch of widgetry there. And the way it's done is the window takes the metadata object here, either creates an empty one when, well, it creates an empty one when you create a window there, or we create a new one whenever we have to parse some XML file. And then we set up a bunch of bindings there. So we bind the property on the metadata to the widget property on the actual widgetry that displays the information. We create a bidirectional binding so that whenever the widget changes, the metadata changes with it, and vice versa. So it's all like bound properties. Sadly, the Python bindings for GTK, for GObject, only allows direct property bindings. So if you have a string property, and if you have two string properties, it's fine. If you have two integer properties, it's fine, and so on and so forth. Works that way. It doesn't allow you to have custom transformation functions. So you have an object property and you want to turn it into another object property. It's not allowed like that. I have no idea, honestly, why. Well, no, that is not entirely correct. There is a way to do that with closures. It doesn't. It's not tested. It doesn't actually like work that well because it's all like wrapping values and stuff like that. So hopefully it will be a little bit better in the future. I have a couple of ideas on how to fix that, but of course, GNOME 43 is upon us, which means that that work will not happen for at least another cycle. Also, it will require me to write a ton of Python, which is, yeah, as I said, I'm not a Pythonista. I'm not a Python developer. I only use Python when I need a very simple language. I need a very basic setup cost, and then I have to parse XML for some reason. I mean, I could have written this in Rust, but parsing XML in Rust is kind of annoying. I would have had to write a custom parser using probably like GNOME or something like that, and then so on and so forth. Hi, Loverboy. Inexes, how mature are the Rust bindings nowadays? They are pretty mature, I'd say. They are in common use. I wrote an entire application with them, so they are actually working pretty well for my use case. I mean, let me see. Yeah, I wrote an application using the Rust bindings that has currently 43,000 installs, whatever that means on Flathub. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I'd say they are fairly mature. They are heavily maintained. The maintainers try very hard to keep the bindings as idiomatic as possible in Rust, but also close enough to the spirit of the C API so that you don't have a massive case of like culture shock when you move between the C API and Rust API, like I do most of the time. But yeah, the Python bindings have some problems in terms of like not maturity. They are very mature. They are too mature. they are uh, they're written for an older version of the API, and changes in the GTK API for GTK4 caused a series of ripple effects in the Python bindings. And it would be great if more people actually um, contributed to the Python bindings, to be honest with you. So it would be great if more people did that. These days, maintaining a binding is mostly trying to cover as much as possible of the type system and try to be um, reactive to changes in the underlying object library more than they used to be in the past, where you had to keep the bindings up to date by adding wrappers around the original C library. These days, the C API is not that bad. It's a lot more easily bindable than it used to be. Hi, Georges. I'm sorry, Vikma. I cannot really help you with Python exercises. As I said, I'm not a Python developer. I do Python stuff, but I'm not a Python developer. Also, if you have a Python exercise, you should probably work on it. Otherwise, it's not going to be helpful for anybody. But yeah, so as I was saying, this is all model view controller. You have the model, there is the metadata object, bunch of properties. The properties are bound to properties on the widgets. Like for instance, the application details. We go here. We connect the widget state using the notify signal on the property here. And then whenever that changes, we update the internal property. Like for instance, when the application ID changes, where is it? Here, we get the text from the row and we set the application ID here, and we notify any watcher of this property that the property has changed. But also, we have an application ID property that is writable. So whenever the application ID changes, we update the contents of the text here, of the entry widget here, and that will cause the UI to update itself to reflect the current value. Since this is technically speaking, this is a cycle. So the metadata changes the entry changes the text, which then will change the property, and the property will update the metadata object. There is like 3 objects in a chain, and it's a bidirectional like binding. To avoid like cycles where we constantly update things, we validate and we check if the if the string has actually changed. If we didn't do this, then the end result would be that the metadata changes would change the widget, and then the widget would change the metadata again, and then continuously do that. So to avoid that, you have to basically check that you're not setting the exact same value over and over again. So it's kind of a manual thing that is not super fun, but it's the only way we know how to break the cycles this way. Some of this stuff is not necessary. For instance, all of this stuff here can go away. I was doing a couple of experiments there. As you can see, I'm also mixing a bit of typing like annotations because I found myself after writing a ton of Rust, well, not a ton, but writing Rust for a while, I find myself a lot more comfortable with Python if I start annotating stuff. Otherwise, I get like itchy a little bit. So I not only run Flake, but I also run MyPy so that I get typing information validated. It's an incremental typing. It's incremental typing information, so it's not all or nothing. So if a method isn't annotated, then MyPy will ignore it. For instance, I don't annotate this method here, even though I should. So if I don't annotate it, MyPy will leave it there. Okay, so yeah, we changed that. Let's see if we can display the information inside the action row. So action rows on libadwaita have a suffix. Let me go and get the documentation for libadwaita. Okay, so an action row fudge, where are you? Okay, so yeah, an action row has the ability to have a suffix widget. Alternatively, I could use a subtitle. So let's see if I can get it there. Okay. So let's go into the licensing here. Window. So project license and metadata license, and we have flags here. Okay. So we could do something like this. So one thing that we can do is modify the metadata. Yeah, notify on the metadata here. So let's see. For instance, do something like this. Data, connect, notify. Let's try and maintain some semblance of consistency when using strings. Notify project license on project license. Right. And then we do here, we go back here and we do project license notify. We are going to need access to the license row inside the window. Let me see. Licensing here. The row is called license row. So we go back here and we call it license row. A template child. And then we go here and we do something like, let me get the license. License equals project license. Or we could do something like, this is exactly the same thing. In this case, it's going to be the SPDX information. So we run it and we open up this. Yep, here. Project license is Apache 2. Okay. We are going to need to move this up. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But for the time being, let's see. Here. Then here. One annoying thing is that GNOME Builder, this is the current stable version of GNOME Builder. GNOME Builder doesn't eliminate white space from empty lines, which is kind of annoying, at least in Python. And so Flake will just go completely mental on us. But yeah, so we connect the metadata object. Whenever the project license changes, we go here. Where are you? Yeah, here. And we do something like this. We printf this, and then we do self license row props subtitle equals license. So let's see. I open a file here. Doesn't appear anything here. Oh yeah, because of course. But if I do something like this, go back. Yeah. So I need to set it up so that it gets updated when it's needed. But yeah, now it's a little bit clearer. So we can do something like okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's a sync create here, doesn't change, doesn't get a notification there. But yeah, we could do project license metadata license. Okay. Something like this. Object license. And we call it subtitle equals this. And there you go. This would need to be like localized and things like that. And this we can also change it to the on license notify, and we can remove this. So we want to get notified every time the metadata changes, which is kind of a lot, but so we might want to do something like this. Yeah, we'll have to change that. I'll have to figure out why it's not working that way. But yeah, project license, Apache 2, metadata license, CC0. So this is a shorthand so that we can see the licensing terms without having to go into the entire thing, into the subsection. We go into the subsection only if we want to change them. Yeah, makes sense. So how do we make that happen that way? So we set up the bindings there. We synchronize the properties, project license, metadata license. It's a bidirectional. Oh yeah, of course. I'm synchronizing the details there, but I'm not synchronizing the value on the yeah. Yeah. I basically have to create yeah. So this would be a lot easier if Python had the PyG object had the bind property full, the transformation, because then I could create a transformation function that took an existing string and created a formatted string with more complex things. Right now, in order to make this happen, I have to basically do what bind property does behind the scenes. So I have to do this. Or I can do this. None. It doesn't matter because I'm not validating this stuff anyway. Where are you? On license 35. Yeah, I can do this. So I'm not accessing this. This can be none and none. Actually, I could. Yep. So right now I'm defaulting to this. And when I do this, yeah, now it's updating. Because I have to resynchronize things. I have to synchronize on creation. I mean, this is exactly what GObject bind property does behind the scenes. So it connects to a notify signal for the property on like both ends, and then when you do sync create, it will call the notify function so that the values will be synchronized. It's exactly the same thing. I should know. I wrote this. It's the main problem is that I wrote a bunch of this code and then I completely forget what it does until it's way too late for anybody to do anything about it. So let's see. A blank line contains white space. Where are you? Here. Yeah, it's kind of annoying here. Let me see if I am missing an editor config. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Dream trading. Okay. And one. So this one should fix the problem with leaving white space around. Okay. I'll probably have to reopen the project or reopen GNOME Builder. It's fine. But it should be fine in the future. So yeah, this one is how we do project licensing inside the action row. Let's cut this here and put it here where it belongs. And we are going to do the same thing for the authorship information. So self, metadata, connect. We are going to notify on the developer name and on author notify. Do we need the developer name in the group? Probably not. Just the developer name is fine. So on author notify, we're gonna go here and do pretty much the same thing. Notify of. Then we're gonna do self author role, which we haven't gotten there. Let me double check that we're doing the right thing. Author row, yeah. And then we're gonna go here. Oops, subtitle. And we're gonna take the self metadata. It's I added a hard cap on the line length. Perfect. Yeah, and I have to synchronize it, of course. Where are you? Here. Self on author notify none. But I don't want to add an empty developer name if the developer name is empty. So name equals self metadata developer name if dev name okay, and we can compress this. Empty. So we do this. Yeah, there are no developer name, but if I do this, go back. Yep. Ah, that works really a lot better than I expected, actually. Yeah, when I will add the release like subsection here, it will be it will have a subtitle of like n releases latest is release version on date. So it will tell you the latest one as well. So it's a lot better that way. Yeah, I mean, even this landing page here, it's not going to stay this way. The main landing page will probably be empty with like open or create a new one. So you'll have like an empty view here. But this is also like a application developer tool. It's not really a user like facing tool. This application is meant to be used by application developers, so they don't have to write XML by hand. No, this looks a lot better than I expected. So let's see where we are right now. Okay. So okay. This is not important. Yes. 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 And yes. This one is not important. Okay. start main, main move licensing information into its own subpage. Show author and licensing details in there. You can tell this is a rough first pass of this application because I'm not even bothering to do like small atomic commits. I usually try to make every single commit like self-contained and decent enough for like reviews and stuff. This is a rough first pass at an application, and you get the history that you get. I'm literally also like committing on main and pushing directly to GitLab, like without any checks or anything. It's also kind of annoying here. So I have Flake and MyPy as as tests inside my main build here. There you go. So I have reuse, I have Flake, I need to add MyPy as well. Let's add it actually. MyPy. Program. Fire false if my found. This one can go away. Here, there we go. So I'm adding this to the build system so I can run this as part of the test suite of my project. The main problem is that, well, it's not a problem per se. It's how all this thing is put together. Essentially, GNOME Builder will build this thing as a Flatpak, of course. Also because it has to run installed. You cannot run it uninstalled. You cannot run it uninstalled because otherwise I would have to write a wrapper script that allows me to basically open up the G resources and set up all the paths and things like that. And it's super annoying, and it's just not how things work anyway. You don't run stuff uninstalled. Running stuff uninstalled is a recipe to get like intermediate state that cannot be copied or cannot be replicated. You want to run this application as it would run on somebody else's computer, not on your computer. I know that a lot of people, a lot of programmers and things like that, they enjoy running stuff uninstalled because it's easier, because it's faster, because it doesn't have to deal with a bunch of like bullshit. But the main problem is you are not replicating the conditions that your application will experience. So you have to be very much cognizant of the fact that you're not doing the right thing. The downside of that is that since we're running inside Flatpak and we're running inside a Flatpak for a Python application using the GNOME SDK, the GNOME SDK doesn't have Flake, doesn't have MyPy, and doesn't have reuse in this case. So if I wanted to, I would have to build, reuse Flake and MyPy inside my Flatpak environment just to run the test suite, which is just not going to happen uh, because it's pointless, right? But that is the counter argument. It would be great if we had a Python extension for the free desktop or the run or the GNOME runtime, just like we have the Rust extension that allows you to write Rust applications. It would be great to have a Python extension that you can depend on and that ships with Flake and MyPy. Reuse is going to be a problem, but it's going to be a problem anyway. I would actually make the case of reuse being part of the free desktop SDK because it's a good tool to do basic software bill of material like checks. But I don't maintain runtimes, so I'm not in a position to argue for it like as a necessity. I can propose it, but yeah. But yeah, if I run this now, the build log, where are you here? Yeah, it will check for use, it will check for Flake, it will check for MyPy, but it will not find any of them because they are not part of the runtime that I'm depending on. So it's kind of annoying, and there's not much I can do. But yeah, if I decide to push it to GitLab, it will run the CI, and in the CI I have two jobs, one for Flake and one for MyPy. I have to add reuse as well. But in this case, I'm literally running on a Fedora like container image. I'm not running on the GNOME container one. Is it called reuse? Not called Python reuse, called reuse. Hopefully it will not be broken. I've had bad experiences in the past. Okay. Listen. Add MyPy to the test suite. Now what happened there? Oh, I haven't saved it. Yeah, again, as I say, I'm roughing it really, really badly. I'm just committing to main and pushing. It's fine. You should not do this. You should definitely not do this. I'm doing it because I like to live on the edge. Yeah, here we go. Also, the Flatpak build is currently broken for obvious reasons because the metadata, the meta info file is incorrect. It's the stock one. It's missing like a ton of stuff, which is ironic for a project that reads and writes metadata file uh, to have a broken metadata file. Well, it's not broken. It's valid. It's just incomplete. So the Flatpak check will fail. So it's perfectly reasonable for that to happen at the moment. But yeah, this is one of the reasons why I want to add validation the pass, to the save pass, or at the very least validation as you write it, because the tool that validates the metadata, the AppStream metadata, is saying it's opaque. It's incorrect. It's not the whole picture. It's unmaintained, and the rules that it imposes are unknown unless you literally go into the code base and you look at them. The error messages are ridiculous. It removes a bunch of stuff, like literally just removes them out of the box. The side on Flutter will just drop keys because. So even if you add them to your own XML, whatevs, like all the metadata information about, oh, this application works on mobile devices. This is great, except no. Flutter will just flat out remove it, even if you put it inside the XML. So like GNOME software will not be able to like display it. It's ridiculous. Oh, reuse found an issue. Oh no. And this is why I don't use reuse from Fedora, because it's broken. Apart from the fact that it's still shipping like 0.13 and reuse 1.0 is out. But yeah, it's also broken because reuse will reuse a bunch of modules from the Debian packaging, so it can do things like use a dep file to avoid embedding like copyright and licensing information inside every single file. Sometimes you cannot do that. Like you have an image, you cannot embed the copyright and licensing information inside a JPEG or a light or a PNG in a compatible way. You can do that inside an EXIF, like extend inside EXIF metadata, but you'd have to have a EXIF parser for that, and it's like it's an insanity. It's a level of insanity that I'm not gonna even touch. So you have a separate file, a separate manifest file that basically says, okay, this file, this is the copyright and this is the license information. to parse that file, you need to have access to Debian like modules and stuff like that, because it's a Debian thing. And on Fedora, that falls apart terribly because the entire thing is maintained very badly. So to avoid doing that, we are going to do this Python 3 pip and then do pip 3 install reuse, and then we do reuse lint. No, I have the same thing in my GI docgen. Yep, this one. Because of course you have to do this. Python 3 pip. Okay, pip install reuse. Where are you? And then reuse lint. Why do people using languages that are not C try to root around these Linux distributions? Well, who knows? I cannot possibly divine a reason why that happens. Yeah, it takes a while. The CI in GitLab takes a little while for your user namespace, because we've had, I hesitate to call them bad people. They are bad people, of course, but they are also dumb as brick. Dumb as a brick. We've had people abuse the CI infrastructure in GNOME to do random bullshit. Mining shitcoins, because of course we've had some idiot, like a random script kiddie, use it to transcode anime episodes from like one format to another, probably to transcode it so that they can watch it on like mobile phone or whatever. And that was a new low. That was, I wasn't prepared to the level to which people will stoop down to. Like, you have a free and open source project that is run by volunteers and is using like bandwidth, compute resources that have been donated by people and companies, and you're abusing it to transcode what I can like describe as shit tier anime series is beyond me. Yeah, my faith in humanity just got like hit terribly. Is there a low for Weebs? Yeah, of course. I mean, if they were transcoding hentai, I would have understood it. Like, if they were transcoding like porn, I would have understood it. I would have condoned it, but I would have understood it. But in this case, they were transcoding like Jujutsu Kaisen. Honestly, seriously, no. What the fuck? Like, please get yourself better taste in anime. Honestly, like the the shonen of the past 2 seasons, and you're transcoding it. But fuck off. Like, download stuff directly, right? I mean, you can go on random like streaming websites and like download that. That is the lowest I've seen people stoop down to. Honestly, what the fuck? Like, seriously, no. Like, find yourself like better anime TDs. Like, find yourself like proper taste. Jesus Christ, Jujutsu Kaisen. Fucking hell. Anyway. Let me double check. So, okay, we can close this, we can close this. Yeah. How long have we been going? 2 hours and 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, no. I think it's enough for like a return to form to stream. I turn to streaming form. I'm not gonna do a 3 hours or 4 hour stream. It's too much. Um, like coming back that an endurance stream is gonna be bad. So let's go. Let's go back to my big head here. There you go. But yeah, basically, this is kind of a toy I'm working on right now. I'll probably try and finish it pretty quickly. It's mostly missing the interesting is not going to be the interesting part. It's missing the boring part, which is parsing the entirety of the spec, and like generating the metadata object that contains the entirety of the expected tags and values there. Um, the remaining like interesting bit is going to be the releases page, because a release contains a description and also like assets, links to assets, like information, metadata on when the release was made, if it's an urgent release or not. That will require some interesting bits of UI there. Um, Other things that I want to add are the content ratings, um, because that requires like you have to specify the kind of content and then a value with the um, like violence none or high or whatever else. And that is one. Screenshots are another thing, because screenshots you have to basically select a file, add it, and then provide a caption if you want to. Otherwise, no. Spoiler alert, captions, Flatpak will disregard the caption entirely. But instead, the AppStream util validation tool will tell you to make the caption short, so short that it's basically useless. So don't ever put captions inside your screenshots, because it's pointless. It's just nothing will happen. So ignore them. If the entire thing was done like by the professionals that we are, the caption would have a description of the image that is usable to provide accessibility information. So you have a screenshot, and then you have 1,000 words that describe that picture, like Twitter does, for instance. Yeah, that would be professional. Sadly, we fucked up. So the caption is currently limited to, I think, 20 characters, 40 characters. I don't even remember. I tried like putting an actual description of the image inside a screenshot, and the validation tool told me, fuck you, you piece of shit. Just remove it. And then, of course, I learned that Flatpak just takes the caption and element and just drops it on the floor. So you don't get captions at all. Just forget about them. It's fine. it's really not fine, but you know, this is what you get. But yeah, I mean, I'm ranting about this stuff, and I would gladly help out fixing it. The problem is the swamp is so big, and if I start fixing it, it's gonna take me like months, and it's not gonna be fun. And also, you will hear me like rant about this for the entirety of the duration of the work, and I will at some point say unkind things to people that I respect and people I call friends. And I don't want to go there. I don't like going there, and so I will not go there. But if you want to like help out in the ecosystem and you want to make the entire thing a little bit better for everyone involved, then I strongly recommend you start looking into this because it's needed and it's a good thing to work on. Especially if you have a temper like I do. Yeah. Yeah, better not. Better not for me to do this. Anyway, if you're still here, thank you very much for listening to me ramble about this stuff. I will probably stream again next week on Wednesday unless I have time, and I will try otherwise to stream on Monday or on Friday. Usually those are the 3 days where I reserve for that. And yeah, I'll keep working on this in the meantime, and I will probably when I have something that I can announce, I will announce it. And let people play with it. Right now, it's pushed to my GitLab user namespace on gitlab.gnome.org, so you can actually look at it if you want to. As I said, there's not much to look at except like the skeleton of a rough first draft of a Python application, but it will improve. I'm certain of that. And yeah, if you have suggestions or if you have like design input, feel free. It's fine. I mean, you feel free to suggest stuff. I have no idea if I will be able to implement stuff. So if you want to contribute, you are also more than welcome to do so. I don't. As I said, this is a project that I'm working on because I have had enough of writing XML in the blind. So who knows? Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I will probably upload this on my YouTube channel for upload the VOD on my YouTube channel so that people can catch up. I have a few other videos on my YouTube channel that are mostly about writing either Amberol, writing documentation, or writing like code for the GNOME platform. So if you want to like learn more about GObject or learn more about how to write a model view controller application in GTK and libadwaita, or if you want to learn more about how GNOME is documented and how to contribute to GNOME, then feel free to join my YouTube channel. Otherwise, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, then join me on Twitch, twitch.tv/abassi, to see me do this stuff live and get notified whenever I start streaming. For everyone else, thank you very much for listening. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, a great rest of the week, and I shall see you soon again. Hopefully, if I don't soon, it will be probably next week anyway. So have fun and yeah, contribute to GNOME. Bye.